Hey guys, it's the Disco Spider, and recently in the 2010 decades, there have been a ton of reboots, ranging from movies to shows to even cartoons. And although there have been some good reboots, there have been many bad reboots. For example, while there have been reboots of cartoons that I liked, such as Scooby-Doo, Mystery Inc., and the Looney Tunes show, there are a ton that I dislike, such as Teen Titans Go, Powerpuff Girls, and Ben 10. And even if I personally hate reboots and rather shows be original instead of not putting any effort in the show cause, hey, we already have a fanbase, so why even try? Networks are still gonna push reboots till they stop making money, so if you can ignore them, join them. So today I compiled a list of the top 10 cartoons that could use a reboot/revival. Since they are never going away, might as well ask for a few. And before we get onto the list, I want to say that I didn't pick 10 shows that I just want to have new episodes of. I try to think of cartoons that either left on a cliffhanger that I'm dying to see how they continue, didn't have enough episodes to the point where I'm satisfied with their run, or just had a good concept that I can see having a new series of episodes capitalizing on that idea. So with that, let's start the list. Number 10, Chalkzone. Now I know Chalkzone is one of the most obscure Nicktoons right next to Mighty B and El Tigre, but I honestly love the idea of Chalkzone to death. I mean, it's about a boy who has the ability to go into a world of erased drawings. How cool is that? And although I don't think the show took full advantage of the idea by not having many recurring characters or really memorable places, but I really think a reboot could work if they really built the world, each episode about the really cool places they explore instead of always being in this boring field. And you could even do the nostalgia thing where Rudy 10 years later comes back to Chalkzone and sees how different the world is and tries to adapt to it. Or maybe Skrull finally took over Chalkzone and Rudy, Snap, Penelope, and other residents of Chalkzone have to find a way to stop him. Or maybe even having an episode about the chalk people getting mad at people drawing on tablets instead of chalkboards, and they have to come out of Chalkzone into the real world and go find animators, which could be a funny inside joke to some animators and cartoon creators. Even if Chalkzone is forgotten by most, the show still has potential. Number 9, Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law. Like Chalkzone, this show has also been forgotten about. In fact, sometimes I forget about the show, but the show was so unique, being about lawsuits of actual cartoon characters. Characters such as Scooby-Doo, Fred Flintstone, Yogi Bear, and a ton more were on the show, being sued or even doing the suing. And I really want the show to come back and have new cartoon characters on it. This show is owned by Warner Brothers, so they only would be allowed Warner Brothers characters, mainly Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. But still, wouldn't it be cool to see Dexter, Usage, Blue Regard, Q, Kazoo being sued or something? They can have an episode where Johnny Bravo was accused of rape, or the kids next door being sued for vandalism. There is so much you can do with the show, and I wouldn't mind seeing it back with all new cartoon characters being involved in legal action. Number 8, Invader Zim. This one was an obvious one. Anyone who likes cartoons want Invader Zim back, and although I've seen only a few episodes of Invader Zim, I 100% agree with everyone that this show needs to come back. It was so different from other shows since it was a really dark show, and I could see this show working well nowadays since most cartoons are being made for both kids and adults with a more serious tone and heavy subject matter such as Steven Universe, Adventure Time, and Gravity Falls. And a show that doesn't just have a serious tone but a full-on dark tone could work nicely. Plus it'll be nice to see more Invader Zim merchandise at Hot Topic again. Number 7, Darkwing Duck. Since DuckTales is getting a reboot this year, it'll only be fair if the other Duck show, besides Quackback, gets a reboot. And I can see the show getting a reboot in the new Mickey Mouse short / DuckTales style. Plus, if they made it more of a parody of a superhero, it could work really well. Something that the Powerpuff Girls reboot should have been, since this is a decade where we have like 3 or 4 superhero films a year. But until that time comes, we still have the new DuckTales reboot that honestly doesn't look that bad. Number 6, Danny Phantom. Danny Phantom has so much potential for a reboot, but I personally would love to see Danny Phantom come back and have story arcs. The show would work perfectly with story arcs, and if done right, could even surpass the original. If it were more like the new Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon, it would work nicely for Danny Phantom. And I've been hearing rumors, even from Nickelodeon themselves, that a Danny Phantom reboot may happen, and I wouldn't even mind if they made a TV movie of Danny Phantom, as long as it's not a freaking live-action movie. If Nickelodeon announces a live-action Danny Phantom reboot, whether it be a movie or TV series, I will be boycotting it. Number 5, Clerks, the animated series. The show may have only had 6 episodes, but man were they the best 6 episodes. Clerks animated will always be one of my favorite cartoons based off a movie. Even if it didn't have the same spirit as the movies, it was still its own thing and worked amazingly. Plus it was way better than Clerks 2 or Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back. And apparently there were plans on a Clerks animated series movie. Nothing confirmed yet, but nothing not confirmed, so it might happen in a few years, or maybe not. And reading some description of the episode ideas they had in mind for season 2, if they were ever going to make a season 2, makes me desperately want the show to come back even more. But even if it'll never come back, we still have those 6 amazing episodes. Number 4, Over the Garden Wall. Now I know this is a mini-series and was supposed to have a beginning, middle, and end, but the world of the Garden Wall is just so great that it needs more than 10 episodes, and although they could have it be about Wirt and Greg coming back years later to the Garden Wall, I would much rather it be about new kids being in this place, maybe even taking place before Wirt and Greg visiting, showing us the before of some of the characters and locations we explored in the original show, or even showing us completely new locations would be great. The atmosphere was just so interesting, I would love to revisit it in new eyes. Number 3, Spectacular Spider-Man. Now this was a late contender to the list since I finalized the list before watching this series, but thanks to my sister getting the Blu-ray from me for Christmas, I marathoned the entire series in less than 24 hours and really fell in love with it. And getting to the last episode, I really wanted more. They left it off on one of the worst ways you can leave a show, because this needs a continuation immediately. I really need to see what happens to Peter and Gwen. Do they end up getting together, and what will Harry do in order to keep Gwen? And there could be a continuation to this series, but because Sony has the rights to Spectacular Spider-Man, but doesn't have the rights to have a show about Spider-Man, they can't have new episodes of Spectacular Spider-Man, hence why it got cancelled. But if Sony would give over the rights to Marvel, then we could maybe see a third season of Spectacular Spider-Man and finally get the answers we have been waiting for. Plus, another season of Peter Parker being Spider-Man would be great. So please, Sony, stop being idiots like always and give Marvel the rights to Spectacular Spider-Man. Number 2, Clone High. Like Spectacular Spider-Man, the show ended on a cliffhanger, but that's not the main reason why I would love a second season of the show. The reason why is because the show was just so freaking funny and clever that 13 episodes isn't enough to fill the hunger I have for Clone High. I really think a satire of 2000s high school dramas would be funny nowadays. Like, they could even make jokes about how dated their satire is. And although the reason why the series was canned was because of Gandhi, I would love it if he would still be in it, because you can't have a Clone High show without Gandhi, since the creators had two ideas of continuing the show with and without Gandhi. And the creators Chris Miller and Phil Lord have stated a bunch of times that they'd love to do a continuation of Clone High, but for some reason it hasn't happened yet. Maybe because of rights issues or no network wanting the show. If it's the latter, I really hope Netflix or something, because with how popular both creators are with making so many movies and shows nowadays, it would be nice for them to come back and work on one of the first things that they made. And now it's time to unveil my number 1. This was a no-brainer for me. In fact, the whole idea of this top 10 list was from me watching the show and really wanting to see more of their adventures. And it's also a show that almost got a reboot, but the network stupidly passed on it. But it'll always be in our hearts, and at the number 1 spot, which is Codename Kids Next Door. Kids Next Door was just an amazing show that how could it not get a reboot? The creator of KND actually had an idea for a reboot right after making the series finale, and 10 years later we had a little pilot to the Galactic Kids Next Door, which was both an April Fool's joke, but also seeing if there were people interested in a reboot. And luckily enough there were. Fans of Kids Next Door were really excited and hoping that there would be a reboot of Kids Next Door, seeing number 1's adventures in space. But sadly, Cartoon Network stupidly passed and decided to make a Powerpuff Girls reboot instead. A reboot no one was asking for. But if Cartoon Network ever greenlights the reboot, I would prefer if the reboot were a miniseries and having an ongoing plot, which could happen since the creator Tom Warburton is a big fan of anime. And it would make Galactic Kids Next Door even better if it had continuity and story arcs, which last season of Kids Next Door actually did. In short, if there was one reboot of a cartoon I could have, I'd easily pick Codename Kids Next Door. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was my top 10 cartoons that could use a reboot/revival. What did you think of my list? Did you agree with some of my choices, or did you disagree with them? And leave in the comments the one cartoon you'd love to see come back as a revival or even as a reboot. Let me know, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more top 10s and reviews of cartoons and what have you. Hopefully at least one of the 10 cartoons on this list will get a reboot someday. We shall see. But until then, I'm the Disco Spider, and peace out.